You might have starved to death or been dragged to the government office to be flogged because you couldn't extract the silver hidden inside common rocks. If you had been an ordinary miner in 16th century Joseon, do you know the secret of the miraculous alchemy that once dominated the global silver market? However, one day in 1503, in a small village called Dancheon, a monumental event occurred that would alter the economic history of mankind, the birth of the Dancheon. Yonun Buni Biop, Dancheon silver lead separation method. This was not merely a technique for digging silver out of the ground. It was magic that turned stones into money, an economic nuclear weapon that made the massive capital of the Ming dynasty and the shogunate of Japan tremble. Now we enter a world of alchemy, recorded as a mere single line in history books, but in reality, a world of blood, sweat, and the lethal, suffocating fumes of lead. In 1503, the 9th year of King Yonsangan's reign, the air in Joseon was cold and heavy. At the time, the nation was suffering from chronic financial ruin. The extravagance of the royal court had reached its peak, and officials were bleeding the commoners dry. But there was a definitive problem. Joseon had plenty of silver mines, but lacked the technology to extract the silver. They knew silver was mixed within the ore, but without the means to isolate it, the rocks were no different from the common rubble scattered along the road. At this moment, two figures emerged, Kim Gambul, a commoner, and Geom Dan, a slave from the Jangri Wong office. The fact that a slave's name was recorded in the annals of the Joseon dynasty, a strictly hierarchical society, speaks volumes about the weight of this event. In a remote mine in Dancheon, they lit a furnace and began a mysterious experiment. Imagine the scene: a dark cave illuminated by roaring red flames, with piles of lethally toxic lead stacked nearby. Kim Gambul and Geom Dan knew that silver and lead have a natural affinity for each other. They crushed the silver-bearing ore into powder and melted it with the lead. In the intense heat, the lead acted like a magnet, drawing the silver into itself. They then placed this silver-lead alloy onto a bed of ash and blew a powerful stream of air over it. Watching this would have been hair-raising. At temperatures exceeding 1000 C, the lead oxidized and seeped into the ash or dissipated into the air. And what remained? A dazzling, pure silver crystal with a purity of 99%. This is the Hochui Biop, cupellation, the art of blowing silver out using ash. To the people of that time, this was a miracle. The rumor that stones melted into silver spread across the country like wildfire. But behind this miracle lay a terrible price. The lead vapors produced during the refining process are a deadly poison. The miners who mastered this craft had to endure the agony of lead poisoning, where gums turned blue and bones seemed to melt away. If it were you, could you stand before that scorching furnace of alchemy, trading your very life for wealth? When the Dancheon method was revealed, the Joseon government was thrown into an uproar. Paradoxically, however, the government tried to suppress and hide the technology. Why? They feared that if silver production increased, the amount of tribute demanded by the Ming dynasty would skyrocket. But the scent of money cannot be stopped by borders or laws. The technology soon leaked through a dramatic path of industrial espionage across the sea to Japan. At that time, Japan was in the midst of the Sengoku Warring States period. Warlords were desperate for military funds. After acquiring Joseon's separation method, Japan's Iwami Ginzan silver mine was transformed overnight into the world's largest silver producer. By the mid-16th century, 1/3 of the silver circulating globally poured out of Japanese mines. And at the heart of it was the Dancheon technology from Joseon. Here comes a chilling twist. Japan used this silver to purchase matchlock guns from Portugal and Spain. The silver produced by Joseon's technology eventually returned in the form of the very muskets that pierced the heart of Joseon during the Imjin War. History's irony is that cruel. The Dancheon method, which we often overlook, was actually the Pandora's box that reshaped the power dynamics of East Asia. Take a moment to think. What if Joseon had treated this technology as a core strategic asset, controlled it tightly, and used the silver to strengthen its national defense? We might be living in a world where the language of Joseon, rather than Japanese, became the standard of East Asia. Now, let's dig deeper into the economic ripple effects of this technology. The 16th century global economy revolved around silver. The Ming Dynasty implemented the single whip law, collecting all taxes in silver, which caused global silver supplies to be sucked into China like a black hole. Armed with the Dancheon method, merchants created a massive silver route. Joseon imported cheap silver produced in Japan and traded it for high-end silk and tea from Ming China. It was a lucrative intermediary trade, but this trade was never peaceful. Every day was a struggle involving pirate raids, corrupt officials, and life-or-death chases by smugglers. The silver mining villages of Dancheon, in particular, were lawless lands where fists were closer than the law. Deep inside the mine shafts, a psychological war unfolded between miners, trying to embezzle silver and the officials guarding it. Some miners swallowed bits of silver to smuggle them out, while others crawled deeper into the darkness of unstable tunnels, chasing veins of silver even while knowing the shafts might collapse. Would you throw yourself into a collapsing mine just for money? For them, silver wasn't just a metal. It was the only rope they could climb to escape hellish poverty. To grab that rope, they willingly chose lead poisoning and the risk of being buried alive. The most astounding aspect of the Dancheon method was its efficiency. With previous methods, low-grade ore, containing only a small amount of silver, had to be discarded. But the Dancheon method extracted every last, microscopic grain of silver hidden in the dross. This mirrors today's high-tech industries, the ability to find value in what others call trash. This was Joseon's greatest competitive edge. Sadly, this brilliant technology declined toward the end of the Joseon dynasty due to excessive state exploitation and the mistreatment of skilled craftsmen. The maxim, "He who owns the technology rules." The world was just as true 500 years ago. The Dancheon technology made Japan wealthy, and that silver flowed to Europe, funding the Age of Discovery. Yet Joseon, the birthplace of the technology, viewed silver as a seed of disaster and locked its doors. At this point, we must ask ourselves, when a world-changing opportunity is placed in our hands, do we hide it out of fear, or do we take the risk and step out into the world? In conclusion, the Dancheon Yon Unbuni Biop was not just a smelting technique. It was the engine of the 16th century global economy and the decisive variable that changed the fate of East Asia. The flame in the small furnace created by the slave Geom Dan and the commoner Kim Gambul may have flickered out in Joseon, but it was the start of a massive firework display that changed world history. The roots of the economic prosperity we enjoy today are watered by the acrid lead fumes, inhaled by nameless miners, and the desperate history of the alchemy they built. What did you feel hearing this story today? Is it merely a record of the past, or is it a warning about another Dancheon opportunity we might be missing today? History repeats itself. Technology attracts capital, and capital creates power. And at the center of that power are always those who discover value that others cannot. See, just like those who found shining silver in the dark caves of Dancheon 500 years ago. What's even more surprising is that the principles of the Dancheon method are still applied in modern precious metal recycling technologies. The 500-year-old technique lives on in today's high-tech industrial sites. Where will the limits of this technology be? And what new technologies will we use to surprise the world next? In the next video, we will uncover the reality of the brutal and fierce Silver War that broke out between Joseon, Japan, and the Ming Dynasty over this metal. If you're curious about the extraordinary methods people used to smuggle silver, despite punishments that threatened their entire families, please look forward to the next episode. If you could go back 500 years and get your hands on this technology, what would you do with that silver? Would you protect Joseon, or would you cross the sea in pursuit of massive wealth? Let us know your choice in the comments.